Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of The View from the Top. We've got an amazing, fabulous edition for you today. It's going to be a load of fun, so please get involved. Let us know you're here. Join the conversation. We want you to write in the comments box on LinkedIn. That's the only way that we actually know that you're here. So let us know, and as we go through, make sure you ask questions. We've got some amazing guests today, and we're going to get into some really interesting subjects. What we're going to do today is we're doing The View from the Top, Talk Dirty. Okay, so if you want to join us and talk dirty with us, then put those comments in the comments box. Join our guests as we talk through. And what do we mean by dirty? Okay, I'll be honest. It was a bit of a hook to try and get people, into the show. But the sort of things we're going to talk about are the things that maybe some of us sort of suspect is going on, but we don't really know exactly what's going to go on. And we're talking about all the issues regarding pricing, things around pricing, things about some of the practices that are going on in the industry, some of the bad practices, some fast practice, and even this is actually more aimed at the consumer side of the industry, and we are involved in the consumer side of the industry when we're talking about things like lump sums and how our employees are spending money with lump sum. Some of the just downright scams that are going on, and I'm pretty sure that as we go through today, you're going to learn a lot, and some of it, I think we're going to be quite shocked by some of the things that we've seen, some of the stuff that we've uncovered. So it's going to be a great hour, absolutely fabulous time we've got lined up for you. What I want to do, as I always do, is just give you a bit of Benivo news and just tell you a little bit about what's happening over the next week or so, just so you've got dates for your diary. The first is that straight after the show today, we are actually running a demo for anybody who's interested in having a demo and seeing the Benivo platform. And that straight after the show, it's a quarter after the hour. We will finish at 5 o'clock UK time, 12 noon Eastern time. So at 12:15 or 5:15, we've got that demo if anybody's interested in seeing that. I also want to just tell you about what we've got coming up next week. We've got two great shows for you next week. We've got The View from the Top is back next week. And this was actually a suggestion that came out of one of the shows a while ago. Someone said in the comments box, you always get global mobility professionals on the show. But what about actually hearing from a VIP expat themselves? So I'm delighted we've got a guy called Marco Valsecchi. Marco is an Italian who is the CEO of Adecco, and he's based in Bangalore in India. Now, Adecco is the second largest HR and recruitment staffing company in the world. And Marco heads up their India operations. He's the CEO out in India. So we'll get his view about what's it like to be an expat and some issues that he's been facing during his lifetime as an expat, and he's been in various countries, but also over the time of the pandemic as well. So I think that's going to be a really fascinating one. And then another subject that we've got coming up is we do Benivo Bites. This is something that we do every 2 weeks. We do a session on Thursday, and we've talked about how you can create an Amazon user experience. We did that. We've done stuff on the launch of our partner platform. And the one we're doing next week on Thursday, that's not tomorrow, a week tomorrow, 30th of July, is how we can learn from fintech and how we can bring fintech into global mobility. And there's lots of fascinating stuff there. So I'm sure you're absolutely going to love that when that goes out. Now we're getting loads of people. We've already got over 120 people online. We've got from Boston, from Brazil, from the Netherlands, from Pennsylvania, from New Delhi, from London, from the International Space Station. That's Henri. I'm not sure I believe you. From New York, from London, from Kansas City. We've got people coming in from all over. But before we sort of move on, it's great everybody's there, and I see we're getting close to 150 already on listening in. Let me just introduce our guests. And I'm delighted to say we've got two amazing guests on. Obviously, we have our regulars as well, but two amazing special guests. To make it difficult for me, they're both called Ben. So I'm really going to struggle here when I bring the Bens on. I know which Ben I'm going to talk to. And let me just tell you, let me just bring them on. So we've got where are you? We've got Ben Heller. Hi, Ben.
How you doing
today?
Easy
so far. I've only got the one, Ben. Yep. And you're the CEO of PricePoint, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah. PricePoint simplifies and automates move pricing, and I'm excited to get dirty with you today.
Cool. And it's great to have you here. And let's bring in the other Ben. There you are, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me. This is a real thrill, and I'm very excited about it, Brian.
Well, it's great to have you on. How am I going to do this? How am I going to work out which Ben is Ben? I've got one Ben. Should I call him necktie Ben or vest Ben? Or you're in Detroit, aren't you? Or Detroit Ben? And then yeah. I've got the more casual Ben, or you're in Long Island Ben, aren't you?
That's right. So, that's right.
Well, anyway, if anybody out there wants to give me suggestions about how I tell the difference between them in this call, put it in the comments box. We'll find a way somehow between the two Bens. Ben, you've done such a service for the industry for the stuff you do on Love+Relo, and I know, and I'm talking about that Ben. I'm talking about Ben Cross at this, not Ben Heller. Okay, so it's difficult for me. Okay, I'm a long way away from you guys. I'm old, right? Okay, so Ben Cross. Okay, Vest Ben, Smart Ben. What am I going to call you? Anyway, Ben. So you
I like Smart Ben. I'll take Smart Ben. Yeah, go ahead though. We go, Brian.
Yeah, I'm not sure Ben Heller's going to be too happy with that one though. So no, I'm getting the yeah, exactly. I'm getting thumbs down. Ben C and Ben H. I'm getting here. BC and BH. I'm getting necktie Ben. They like. Anyway, BC. Right. So you do Love+Relo. How did that idea come about?
What's funny is really it came about from the conversations that we have at conferences, right? So and Ben Heller, I mean, is a good personal friend as well, and we'll sit up solving the world's problems, in mobility and otherwise, over a Manhattan or an old fashioned or something like that, and it's just that feeling, that you have when you connect with people at these conferences, and that love, that genuine affection that you feel for these people. And then when you show up to the conference and you walk in, and it's like, hey, and it's hugs and it's all kinds of great feelings. And so I wanted to really be able to bottle that and then give it to people, because I'm having these amazing interactions and these relationships. And I realized that most of the industry can't have these relationships just due to logistics. And so I wanted to really bottle that up and then bring that to people. And so I wanted to lead with love. And anyway, so that's what I did. Love+Relo.
Well, that's cool. So what are we getting? Spiffy Ben. I'm not sure which one's Spiffy Ben. Ben with beard, Ben without beard. There's two beards there. That's not going to work. What have we got? Don't get cross with Ben or he'll give you hella. Oh dear. Okay. Ben the bold and Ben the beautiful. Again, I don't know which is which. You're both
bold and beautiful.
You're both beautiful.
I'm probably not as bold as you are, Ben.
I'm afraid you're beautiful.
I'll take it.
Benvenidos we're getting here. Anyway, people are really happy that you guys are on the show. So that's great. Anyway, it's great to have you both here. But BC, okay, I'm gonna do that. So what's your day job? I mean, I know you do this Love+Relo.
Yeah, yes, that's a good question.
It's a bit of a hobby. So what's your day job?
My boss asks me that question all the time. Actually, I work for a company called University Moving and Storage. They pay the bills. There's one of their little trucks behind me there. It's a North American Van Lines truck. It's a blue truck there. So yeah, we sell domestic and international moving. I'm based in Detroit. We're very strong in the Midwest Great Lakes region, and we do pack and haul moves for national account customers and lots of relocation management companies. Cool.
Now I've been very rude because I've got two more guests who are just sitting backstage, and I've been ignoring them. So I think it's not very nice of me. So I better bring them on too. So we've got Michelle. Hey Michelle, where are you today?
Hi there. I am actually in upstate New York, about 3 hours north of my home in New Jersey. And listen, I've been backstage.
Lovely out there.
Yeah, it's lovely and a lot cooler. But listen, I've been backstage cracking up because I love the banter and the show today. I mean, it always has a good vibe, but today I feel some good stuff coming.
And hey, we just cracked 200. We've got 200 people watching us today, so that's good. And that ignores my family who are out listening too. And last but by no means least, where are you, Julia? Good to have you back. And where are you then today?
I'm in Cornwall, so I'm about 3 hours away from where I normally live. Yeah.
Okay, so you're down by the sea on the Cornish coast.
On a cliff. Yeah, overlooking the
Lovely.
sea.
Okay, and you're going to be talking to us. We're going to sort of move the others backstage, and you're going to be talking to us about the latest immigration updates.
Yeah.
So it pains me to do this to the two Bens, but I'm going to move you backstage. So it's been nice knowing you, but do hang around, and we'll bring you to the conversation in a moment. So let's move you guys back. And I'm also going to say goodbye to Michelle, but you've got loads of research for us you're going to share with us in a minute, haven't you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, well, we're going to be getting into that, and we're going to get into this talking dirty stuff in a moment. But before we do, okay, Julia, I know a lot's been going on this week, so
yeah.
I'm guessing you might want to start with the United States.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I just want to say a big shout out for Meg Sassaloo. She's an attorney in our New York office, and she worked with me through yesterday just to sort of condense 6 points that I think everyone should really know about what's happening in the US. And we've covered the two proclamations. But last Friday, there was a really important clarification by the State Department as to the exceptions allowed under the proclamations. And one was for split families. So you'll remember that, unfortunately, spouses and children were caught up in this in the proclamations, and if they didn't have a visa at the time, they couldn't join their partners or their parents, and it was causing a lot of hardship. We had a lot of really terrible cases. One case that we were dealing with, someone had a baby, and the husband hadn't seen the baby since it had been born for 3 months. So anyway, there's now a national interest exception available for spouses and children. And if you qualify, you have to make an appointment at a consulate and apply for the exception. Also, there's some clarifications of L1B and L1 exceptions for those in public health, healthcare professionals, or those that are doing research in a COVID-related matter or a medical area that's impacted by COVID. But also, please keep remembering that there's a national interest exemption still exists for those entering the US to facilitate the immediate and continued economic recovery of the US. And this is where you must go for your kind of business exceptions. The second thing I wanted to say is there's a really big news as of last Thursday, where there's new exceptions for COVID against the travel ban in the US. So this is exceptions for people coming from Schengen, UK and Ireland. And you remember that at the moment there is a travel ban, and the way we've been getting around this is by putting people in Mexico for 14 days in Cancun and then moving them to the US. But now, last Thursday, they revised the criteria, and there's national interest exceptions for those working in public health, students, academics, investors. But the really important point for everyone listening today is that there's also an exemption for those that want to travel to provide and that are providing substantial economic benefit for the US economy. And they call out senior level managers and dependents who are providing strategic direction necessary for the success of the company or venture. So it's a really, really important thing. But I just want to warn you that it's a single entry valid for 30 days. And I don't think everyone's focusing on that. So there is this great exception, but it's single entry. The third big thing is that last week there was a presidential executive order eliminating preferential treatment for those that come from Hong Kong. So that's a really bad news for people from Hong Kong. And basically they're now in the same situation as Chinese citizens in terms of how long they have to wait for green cards and visa validity, etc. The fourth thing is that ICE extended the COVID-19 concession for I-9s. So that concession was that you could do your I-9s compliance remotely, and that's been extended to August the 19th. The fifth point, which was there was this huge victory last week for those that were opposing the out of blue restrictions, which basically was saying that if you were studying online and it was just online, you had to leave the US. And the judge in the MIT Harvard lawsuit said that the DHS could not move forward with these restrictions. So that was a really great outcome, although there is some indication that the administration is looking at some more guidelines and perhaps they might affect new students. And the final point is that we're still watching and waiting for this new H-1B criteria. And as soon as we get that, we'll be talking about it. And the last point is that on the August the 4th, 74% of the US CIS is going to be furloughed because they're running out of money. They've asked for 1.2 billion, which that will allow them to continue their operations. But because of this, it's really important to just get on and file everything you can in case they don't get the money the agency has requested. So just two quick points outside the US. The first one on China. We have had some indications that the Chinese government's actually been reaching out to some companies and offering to expedite green card applications. And that's really, really beneficial because, you know, I kept saying if you have a green card in China, you're outside the travel ban. And the second point I wanted to say is that it's breaking news point, but we did get some rumors and we are waiting to verify them. And I can confirm next week that if you have a negative COVID-19 test taken 72 hours before you fly to China, there's rumors that you won't have to quarantine in government facilities. So we'll keep a track on that and update you next week. And then finally, just to say, in Singapore, we've seen a number of companies go on a watch list because they haven't, they're deemed not to have been offering sufficient jobs to local hires. Obviously, that has a lot of ramifications, and this is a global trend. So really important that you look across the globe at your population, make sure you're trying to prefer and give jobs to local citizens. And the very last point is in the last few hours, there was news coming in from Qatar that they're planning to allow travel back into the country. And thank you very much to Azim Mohideen, who's literally just given me all of that. And we will, again, talk about that in more detail when we've got some more details next week.
Okay, so thank you so much to you, Julia. We'll bring you back into the conversation later. It's been great having you on. I'm sure there'll be questions and comments coming through, but those updates are really, really appreciated. So we'll just say goodbye to you for the moment. And I'm just looking at the comments, the comments coming in. We're getting people from all over the world making comments, and it's just great. There's some guy here, where is he? In the audience, Ben Cross, love to take questions about household goods. Now, how's he doing that? Because we all know he's backstage. So yeah, there you go. You're multitasking there, Ben.
You know it. You know it. I got to, man. I got to do something during the immigration update.
Absolutely.
How about listen to it?
Paying attention.
Yeah, yeah, I sure will.
Absolutely. So, okay. So, what we're going to talk about now is moving companies. And I admit, you know, my background is the accounting firms, and I ran conferences and stuff. I'm now with a tech company. But the one thing I have never done is I've never done moving. I've never lifted a box. I've never packed anything. You know, probably means I've never broken anything either. And I don't know how the industry works. So let's just start off. Just you two guys, my double bends. Just tell me a bit about how the HHG, the moving companies actually work and what it's like doing a move, and then we'll take it, and then we'll get into some of the things that can go wrong, pricing and otherwise. But tell us a bit about how it works.
Sure. Well, I'm assuming you've moved yourself before, right?
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the same thing, but it's like the same thing, but better, and we charge for it. So you take that same principle and then we just do it a lot better, right? And so basically we come in, we pack up the entire home, put everything in boxes.
You don't. I'm moving from London to New York.
Yeah.
Okay? You put stuff in my box, in the box. It doesn't go in a van that then drives across the ocean. So
No,
just talk me through the
fair enough. So we go. Yeah, so basically we come to your home in London, we pack up everything, and packing means taking those items, wrapping them in paper, sticking them into a carton or a box. Then we take all those things that are inventoried, stickered, etc. We put those into a truck, and then we take them to our warehouse where we can containerize them, or we could containerize them at residence, either into a small wooden lift van like that, or a big shipping container, 40 foot container, depending on how much stuff you have. And then we seal it, and then we put it on a boat, and we bring it to.
So interrupt, presumably not straight away. You're waiting for other ones to come on the boat as well.
Well, if you fill up a container, and I'm assuming you have a home of a decent size, right? So you'd probably fill up a
40 foot, yeah,
40 foot container. Then we would put it on the next vessel going out. If you only have like 1,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds or something, we might put it in a lift van, and then we might put other lift vans into that container, and then we ship it over to the port of New York, where it goes to our agent once it clears customs, and then our agent then delivers it to your home. In a place like New York City, they're probably putting it into a truck and then bringing it out, and then they bring it to your home. Usually the contents are put on the first flat surface of your home, meaning the countertop or the whatever, your dressers or whatever. We take away the packing paper and the cartons. You sign a bunch of paperwork that you don't know what it says, and we leave.
Okay, so you've left the mess there. Everything's there. I've got to do
We take most of the paper and the cardboard away, typically with a full unpacking. So corporate moves typically get a partial unpack, meaning mattresses and mirrors, or they get like maybe a full unpack, depending on the level of the employee and how generous the policy is and how much the company cares about the employee's experience. And if they care a lot, then we do everything. If they don't care much at all, then we do very little.
Okay, so you've taken my stuff to New York, and the apartment I've got in New York is on the 4th floor.
Yep.
Okay, so that's all going up. That's all in the price, or is that extra at that point?
No, that's all in the price. Typically,
I'm not talking about university moving. I'm talking about
typically moves,
the other competitors.
Yeah, typically moves of an international ilk like that are done either by like say cubic meter, cubic foot, or they're done by weight. In any case, those are typically into the tariffs on a corporate move. On a residential move, it's a lot less standardized, and you can run into some accessorials, that we like to call them, extras.
And even in corporate moves, like if it was a 7-story walk up and there was no elevator, there's going to be an additional charge for that because you need more manpower at the destination, and that probably wasn't known about at origin, or when the survey took place, or when they gave you the quote. They had no idea what they were getting into in destination. So that's going to be a supplemental cost, like what you talked about.
Okay, we're already getting what you say, supplemental cost, but I suppose the assignee at the time they book you doesn't know the accommodation they're moving into. That's right. And that's the problem. But there's no way you can know what the cost should be. But the client, does the client know in advance, or will the client know what those extra costs will be? I.e., if it's more than 3rd floor, or the entrance to the house is more than so many yards from the curb, what those extra costs are, or those sorts, or are they the nasty surprises that we hear about?
So so if I may, just from my side, and I'd love to hear Ben's standpoint, right?
Anything will do.
I've heard that. I typically list accessorials at the bottom, so it's like, okay, shuttles cost this, maybe Janet Turner's international force, she's telling me walk-ups are extra, so any accessorials like that are typically listed at the bottom of the paperwork. That's what we typically do. Ben, what do you see?
It's highly variable. So in most corporate environments, they're trying to control pricing via RFPs. And more often than not, I saw that accessorials and supplementals were not controlled as a part of it. Also, you got to remember that it isn't one company that is doing this. You have an origin agent, you've got a freight company, you've got a destination agent. They all have different costs. They control it differently. So it is challenging to predict what those supplemental and accessorial costs are going to be, and it's the way that people are controlling it is highly variable.
Okay, so we're getting lots of questions that are coming in. I'm just going to put some of them up here so we can talk about some of them. And this was addressed to one Ben, but this can go to any Ben. How your actually no, we'll start with you, BC. How are your drivers and their team dealing with the July heat and the COVID health and safety restrictions?
Yeah, it's brutal, and like you're talking about in New York City, right on a fourth floor walk up, it's brutal. The clients are requiring, they send out these memos that require masks. Some are requiring gloves. Some are even requiring like booties and things like this in the home. And a lot of these memos came out in March, right, and have not been amended to reflect local guidance, right? So there's parts of the country that are hotspots, New York City, right? There's parts of the country that are not hotspots. And typically they're rated like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? One being the worst, the hottest of the hotspots. And but there's these what I would consider, in my opinion, overly prescriptive mandates on the amount of PPE, right? Personal protective equipment that the crews have to wear. And the truth is, they're asking to wear gloves. Well, wearing gloves when you're sweating, the gloves fill up with water. You can't hold things. So now I'm carrying a couch up a 4th-story walk up with, in a very precarious situation. It's not safe for us. It's not safe for the couch. There's a lot of things that could go wrong here, right? And so it's a real struggle. I'll be honest with you. And I think that, we look at what the United States military and the Department of Defense has done, and that's the largest customer in the world for household goods moving is the U.S. military, right? They move 400,000 shipments a year, to give you an idea, about over $2 billion of spend. And why I bring them up is they've actually gone in and put a 10% increase on their rates to counterbalance the additional cost of equipment, the additional cost of labor, and the additional time it takes to service shipments properly.
So, this is interesting. We got, oh boy, this is going to be fun. I don't know who that is on LinkedIn, but so we've got those comments. There's so much here. I don't think people realise the sort of comments. Again, from Gusher, and supplementary costs, parking permits, external elevators, shuttles, handyman mounts. And from Steve Burson, same thing. Parking fees tend to come up a lot. I'm trying to look at it. You're looking at it from the moving company's point of view, and I'm trying to look at it from the RMC's point of view, or even from the client's point of view, and saying, how do I control this? This is crazy. There's all these incidental costs, and there's no way I can just get like a fixed fee and say, well, you know what? It is what it is. If it's the 3rd floor or the 1st floor, the 54th floor, you guys deal with it. Yeah, it's in the fee, but the industry doesn't work like that, does it?
Well, they try like that. That was my role prior to being at PricePoint. I was at Accenture, and I've been a supply chain and procurement professional for 15 years prior to joining PricePoint. And Accenture, my primary job was to source global mobility from relocation management companies all the way down to household goods. And you try and control it. And the way procurement typically uses it is via RFPs, where you lock in pricing. The problem is that there's no two moves that have ever been the same. Pricing is different based upon the different time of year, what day it is, what stuff is being moved, where it's being moved from and to. There's just a tremendous amount of variables associated with that it makes locking in pricing extremely difficult. The biggest one that's coming up now is in time of COVID, freight rates are all over the place. Now, sea freight spiked for a while. They've calmed down a little bit. Road freight, if you're a truck driver, you've been busy. You've been, Ben Cross, I'm sure a lot of the people who were working for you probably were shipping PPE and other materials. Everyone in America saw that you couldn't get Amazon Prime in 2 days during COVID. It was 2 weeks. Just there wasn't enough capacity for that. So that spiked up pricing there. And then air pricing, it just went up a tremendous amount, and the capacity went way down. So you have all these variables, and trying to control it actually negatively impacts not just the corporation, but it impacts the transferee. And so I know we're going to get into this later, so I don't want to spend a ton on it now. But the way procurement and mobility procurement has worked in this industry to try and control more costs is not effective. It just doesn't work the same way as it would for buying a widget.
I totally agree, Ben.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
We're getting so many more comments coming in. Alex told, but as always, it's about setting expectations all involved as early as possible. We need to protect the crews as well. I mean, that's a great point. Or here's one I'll throw out to you. What are all the things that can go wrong in the process that Ben BC was describing, and how to avoid them? I mean, I was talking to a moving guy from a company yesterday, and he said to me, I couldn't believe it. He said to me, his recommendation would be, don't move stuff. You know, basically what you've got is you've got all your most personal possession, you know, the stuff you love, or you've got your entire contents of your life. You're putting in a container that's going to be shipped on the seas, maybe at some time moving 90 degrees. You know, recognize the fact it's going to get broken. Some of it's going to get broken. And he said if it was down to him, anything valuable, he wouldn't ship. He just put it in storage.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that too extreme?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a saying in the at least in the domestic U.S. moving market that furniture is not made to move. It's made to sit in your house and look pretty for 20 years, and that's about it. And what happens is when you put it on a truck, you subject it to a lot of stresses that it's not subjected to: extreme heat, extreme cold, a lot of tweaking and torquing, a lot of rattling. Think about the amount of rattling and vibration over a 2,000-mile move, you know, across the country. Not to mention the moisture and the salt and things like that from the sea, right? So he's got a point there, right? Now, we are in the moving business, and it's our job to move furniture and to move personal effects. And so I think that things that can go wrong in the process, it comes down to preparation and materials and practice is what I kind of boil it down to. And what I've seen is, for instance, people that do a really nice job with domestic moving don't tend to do a great job with international moving, because the materials for an international move are disposable materials. So for a domestic move, we have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of quilted cloth moving blankets on our truck, and we toss those over and we tie them up with rubber bands, believe it or not, right? Reusable rubber bands. Everything is reusable. Conversely, when I ship something from London to New York, in your example before, I'm using what's called craft paper. I'm using a brown paper, 3 or 5 ply brown paper wrap that I'm wrapping on your furniture in paper, and then I'm taping it, right? So it's a very different process. Down to the size of the pads used are even different, right? And so there's a lot different technique there. And I think another thing that we need to consider when we think about the materials that are used, why is this important? Well, when you look at disposable brown paper, you know who else uses a lot of disposable brown paper? Amazon, Walmart.com. Okay. E-commerce has driven up the cost of brown paper, corrugated, paper pulp, all that stuff has driven up the cost exponentially in the last 5 years. And we don't see any ability to recoup those costs as movers, as service providers. There's no ability in our current tariff structures and the way that we price, just like you would have a fuel surcharge, right, to account for the fluctuations in gas prices and diesel. You have no paper surcharge. You have no corrugated surcharge, right, to account for the change in the cost of paper pulp. And it seems tedious maybe and trifling to talk about, but the truth of the matter is, when we use 200 cartons, 200 boxes to pack your shipment, Mr. Friedman, and ship it to New York City for the wonderful life you're about to endeavor upon, right? And then we wrap everything that you own in 5 ply brown paper. You know, the amount of cardboard and paper we use on that shipment might cost us $1,000, you know, and it might have only cost us $500 10 years ago.
we had that question from somebody. It's in the comments somewhere. But do you think prices are going to go up because of the pandemic?
They have.
They have. They have, and
like,
they should.
We just looked at this yesterday. The average air shipment has gone up $500, $516 within the PricePoint environment over the past quarter.
What's that as a percentage?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's substantial. I'd say probably average international air freight cost is somewhere around $2,500, $3,000, somewhere in there. And then, so $500 is a material impact to that. Yeah. And then sea freight has gone up a little bit. Road freight is like actually gone up more than I anticipated. I didn't realize that the road freight components would increase as much as they did. But so yeah, absolutely, it's laws of supply and demand.
Yeah, and they should go up, and yet
I'm bringing Michelle in actually, and who we've been ignoring for a while. Hey, Michelle.
Hello.
Good. We'll carry on with this conversation, but I know you've been doing some research. I just want to move the conversation on to how, not so much the moving companies, but how the moving companies now, the clients should interact with the moving companies.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a bit about your research?
Yep. So we're focusing on how shipment is coordinated or handled. The shipment of the household goods, how is it best handled? And we polled our LinkedIn audience and gave them 3 options. And I know Ben and Ben are going to absolutely have a say on this. So the choices that we asked the LinkedIn audience was, is it best to handle the shipment of goods via a client directive to the RMC, meaning I'm the client, I say use University Moving, or just using the RMC supply chain, or via a lump sum to the employee. So those were the choices. We'll let Ben and Ben comment, and please, our audience, if they want to share their thoughts in the comment section, that would be great.
I hope you like the plug there, Ben. Use University Moving.
I do. Can we clip that 1 second clip? Can we just clip that out?
I was absolutely ABC.
Ben, before we get to that, I've got to ask you this. How did you guys come up with the name University Moving? You don't move universities, I guess.
Yeah, well, we do move universities, actually. We moved an entire university from Michigan down to Florida. But before we did that, 51 years ago, we were founded in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which people in the States know is the home of the University of Michigan. And the Big House, the largest stadium in the United States, actually holds 124,000 people. So that's where we were founded originally 51 years ago. And we've evolved the business quite a bit since then.
Okay, so you were founded next to universities. Good job you were founded next door to a dog track. Anyway, we can have a vote on renaming the business if you want.
We could, and unfortunately, I don't have a vote, but yeah.
We'll stick with University Moving.
Yeah, it beats my last company name.
We'll give them the plug,
yeah.
So anyway, what are your views? I'm guessing you might have strong views on this. So do you think that the client should contract directly with the HHG company? Do you think they should go via an RMC? Or do you think they should just give the money to the assignee and let them go lump sum and contract? Okay, Ben Heller, do you want to give us your views on this?
Well, giving the money directly to the transferee is not the right decision. So let's just put Ben Cross. Am I?
Boo!
Yeah, don't give the money direct to the transferee.
Like
terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea.
A lot of people are doing lump sum. That is probably one of the biggest growth areas, mobility at the moment. But you're saying that's a rubbish idea.
Why don't you just tell your employees you hate them and say, here's $5,000 for the discourtesy?
Yeah, we'll get into why the going that direction is wrong, but of going to an RMC or directly to the household good provider, I think it depends. If you're a smaller company and you don't have a lot of volume, you're not going to necessarily negotiate any better directly yourself. there's time and energy associated with managing suppliers, managing contracts. It may make sense for you to go directly through the RMC. They are an extension of your team. They solve problems for you and use their supply chain. They vetted their supply chain. If you're a larger company, I think it makes sense, not just from a financial perspective, but also from a controlling the experience perspective, to have a direct relationship with the household good provider. Like if you have a direct relationship with them, then like when they get a move of yours, it's not just a generalized move. They're taking care of you, that you are important to them. Like if there's a situation like that comes up, it gets resolved a little faster. If like they know your policies, they know what you're going to accept ahead of time, as opposed to if you are passed through the RMC, where that RMC has to be an extension of 100 or 200 different companies. How could they possibly know exactly what you want? So I think that it really depends on what the goals of that mobility department are. But Ben Cross, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, I think it's interesting that these are the three options, right? Because what I found is it really depends on where your company's mobility program is in its maturity, right? And so in the infancy, right, meaning we don't have one and we got somebody we want to hire and they don't live here, what do? The first thing that they do is they do lump sums. They say, let's give them a hiring bonus. Let's give her a relocation stipend. Here's some money, figure it out. See you Monday, right? That's what most companies do to start with. And then this goes horribly wrong over the course of months or years, right? And then they finally figure out, hey, or they find a good mover in their area, and a relationship develops and they say, hey, let's just set up a contract where we can direct bill these services and we'll just pay you. And then every quarter we'll have lunch and we'll talk about how it's going. And it's lovely. And then an RMC shows up and says, hey, we can do it better, faster, cheaper. We have economies of scale. You can outsource this. Why are you paying all these HR people? You're wasting your money. Give it to us. And then the RMC takes it over and they manage the process under one roof, right? And then the company becomes large enough and savvy enough and has enough of a spend in this area that they actually a lot of times go back to the moving companies via an RFP. And they actually recontract directly with the moving companies and have the RMC manage those contracts, because they realize, to Ben's point, how much money they could be saving while still not kind of getting their hands dirty in the shipment allocation process, but still saving some of that 10 to 12%. So I find it it's almost cyclical. I find most things in life are, and it's kind of almost cyclical.
And I mean, we're getting comments coming through on that, and there seems to be a move against lump sum, or been against it amongst our listeners, our viewers. Rob Lesser, growth in lump sum doesn't mean it's right. It's not well thought out. Do you do lump sums for business travel? Lump sums for office furniture? How about office supplies? So anyway, Michelle, great comments from Rob. But Michelle, why don't you start? What do the audience say?
Well, I think similar to what we're seeing from our listeners, the winner, if you will, was RMC supply chain. Use RMC supply chain at 69%. 20% of respondents said client directive at 20%. And there were 11% of people that said use lump sum for the employee.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have it because it's an anonymous poll. It'd be quite interesting to see, how that's split between how many of the people said use an RMC were RMCs, how many of the corporates were saying you use lump sum. That's the problem with a LinkedIn poll. Treat this poll with a little bit of caution.
What I've also found, thanks, Brian. What I've also found is that there's a lot of closet lump sum people out there, right? We're talking dirty, right? So there's a lot of closet lump sum people out there. Okay. I actually had this fight with a good friend of mine who's a corporate mobility manager, and he's very anti lump sum. And then it came out in the conversation, well, we give lump sums to like the new, like the entry level people. Like, yeah, we give them lump sums. And I'm like, you're part of the problem, Jack. Anyway, so I think it's interesting because even people that say, because we only gave people one option, I presume, in this poll, right? You had to pick one of the three, right? So I think what sometimes what we see is that people do offer, lump sums, and even through RMCs, they'll offer lump sums, which I find very interesting because relocation management companies are in the business of managing relocation. So I don't know why they would facilitate or allow lump sums, but whatever.
Because it's being demanded.
Other comments coming in. Melissa said RMC, 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 RMC with 4 exclamation marks. So I think we know where she's standing. Craig Chapman, could make sense in a tiered policy just for new hires with minimal household goods. Trisha Tavares, who's been on the show before, she's with Unilever, don't like lump sums either. New employees have no ideas of how to use it.
That's right.
So we're getting lots of comments coming in. I mean, and there definitely seems to be, as I said, a move. I was talking to one mover the other day, and he said to me that if he was on the mobility side, he said he would always use 2 RMCs. He wouldn't use 1 RMC and go out to multiple quotes, or use 1 RMC and have 1 survey, 3 quotes. He would say, because you never know which quote you're going to get back. He says, and I mean, this guy is very cynical, I must say. So I'm not going to mention his name, but you don't like that. He said, if you go to 1 RMC, 1 survey, 3 quotes. He says, well, how do you know that the 3 quotes are necessarily going to be the best ones? Because he says maybe on their panel there's a need to rotate them, and just because one goes next time, the other one will get it. And he says the best way to do it is you have 2 RMCs, and then each RMC can go out and get quotes.
Brian, the next time you talk to this guy, Brian, the next time you talk to this guy, you need to go close to him and you need to slap him in the face and say, "What are you doing?"
He knows who he is. If you're online, come and defend yourself.
You need to slap him in the face, because think about the costs and inefficiencies that he is creating. He is now having 2 RMCs have to manage 3 suppliers who now have to do 6 on-site or virtual surveys, which aren't free. On-site survey per move costs about $150. A video survey maybe $50 to $75. Think of all that waste that is being created so that maybe he saves $50 tops. And on top of that, think of the experience for the transferee. They now have 6 invasive processes where people are going through their house or through a video survey. That's an awful experience. That person needs to be slapped in the face. You need to do that, Brian. Brian, promise me you'll slap him.
I'll slap him.
And
I'll
if you're
slap
out
him.
there,
I got heavy hands.
Come and defend yourself. You've got 2 bends on you at this
point.
point.
So here's the other way people do this, right? Is they'll get 1 survey done, one unlucky moving company gets chosen for the survey. They'll send somebody out there, they'll survey it, they'll send the survey back to the relocation company. The relocation company then sends the survey to 2 other movers to get 3 bids to satisfy some procurement person's 3 bid policy, and then they spread the pain on who's got to go out and do the survey. The problem also is, though, we have coordinators who are tied up in the office doing all these, phantom surveys. And it's like, can't y'all just go to bid, pick one and get it over with? What's the problem?
Okay, I'm going to move the conversation on a bit, because I said we're going to talk dirty. And we've done a bit, but I don't think we've got dirty enough. And the real dirty area, I think, actually comes in with lump sums. And I know, BC, you've been doing quite a lot of work exposing some of this on your Love+Relo show, which is great show. But let's just talk about some of the consumer scams and some of the stuff that happens. So we go lump sum, we give the poor assignee some money, and they then go and book their own move. Okay, what can go wrong? Tell me.
So let me ask you real quick, right? Brian, you need a plumber. What do? Brian, you need a plumber. What do you do?
Yeah, I either go with a recommendation or I Google it.
You Google it, right?
Yeah,
so this is what people do, because you know what? They need a mover a lot less than they need a plumber,
exactly.
Okay? They move every 4 years, 10 years, never, whatever, right? And so they go on the Googles, okay, and they type in mover, okay? And God help you what comes with what Pandora's box of awfulness comes at you, okay? The first 3, and people, go ahead and do this right now. Actually, I challenge our viewers right now. Go in there and Google mover, okay, or moving, okay? And then click on the first thing you get, okay? Click on the ad, All right.
Do it now,
feeling
guys.
froggy,
Live.
click on the
Open
ad.
pillow,
Okay.
open another
And then
tab.
in another window, I want you to go and I want you to get Brian Friedman's phone number off the internet. And I want you to put the phone number into the moving quote engine, okay, that's going to give you a quote instantly, and I want you to hit submit, okay, and then we're going to watch Brian's phone just blow up right now for the rest of the hour. So what happens is they then sell this lead, they sell your information to about 6 other moving companies, and I use moving company loosely, okay, 6 other people that buy leads for moving, okay, and then those people call you on the telly. All right. And they say, hi, Mr. Friedman, what do you got? And you're like, I got a file cabinet. They're like, sweet, $500 and I'll ship you to New York City. And you're like, hey, $500. That sounds amazing. Let's do it. Right. And they say, okay, cool. Give me your credit card. Let me take that $500 deposit right now. And, Matthew, go ahead and put Brian you have Brian Friedman's cellular telephone, right? Go ahead and put that into moving.com.
International call for somebody.
Let's learn something today, right? Okay, so anyway. So anyway,
no, you carry on, Ben. Tell us what's
yeah, I will carry on. All right, so we go ahead, and now these people are ringing your telly right now, and you book with them. You give them your credit card. They reserve this for you because they've got a truck in your area, okay, and then the truck shows up on the move day. And they're like, gosh, you said you had a file cabinet, Mr. Friedman. It looks like you have quite a bit more here than a file cabinet. Here's our revised estimate, right? If you're lucky, this is what here's our revised estimate. And it's, it's 3 to 5 times higher than whatever you agreed to on the telephone. Generally. And you're lucky if they tell you that before they start loading. A lot of times they'll load it first, put it on the truck, and then they'll say, Mr. Friedman, here's your revised estimate. And that's if you're that's the second best case scenario. Third is if they get to destination.
At this point, I've been taken hostage.
That's right.
Because what you're doing is you've taken my life, everything I own, my photos, my family memories, my filing cabinet, my furniture, my bed. You've taken my entire existence, my kids' existence, and you've got it locked up on a trailer somewhere.
Correct.
I am screwed.
You are totally screwed. But hostage, the problem with the word hostage is it implies that a crime has been committed. And the truth of the matter is, at least in the United States, what I've described thus far is not criminal activity. Okay? They've said you are actually complicit in this con. I said to you, Mr. Friedman, how much stuff do you have? And you said a filing cabinet. And I said, okie dokie, $500. Well, you knew you had more than a filing cabinet. I knew you had more than a filing cabinet. And when I show up, I'm going to price you based on that weight, but I'm going to extrapolate that now based on all the household goods you have in your home. So that filing cabinet for $500 for 50 pounds, now you have 10,000 pounds. Do the math, right? Multiply it out, right?
That's the difference, isn't it, in the US and Europe? Because you guys do moving based on weight. And we do it on volume. Right?
This is actually correct. But what's interesting, U.S. domestic moves are done on weight generally. International moves are done on cubes generally. However, what we see actually in the U.S. domestic space is because the proliferation of these con men are actually, a lot of them, foreign nationals, and they come over and they actually quote in cubes. So one of the little red flags that you see, at least in the U.S. domestic, is quotes that are done in cubes and then translated to weight. And if it's price based on cube, that's also dangerous, because I could put your filing cabinet at the back of the truck and say you took up 26 feet of this truck, and the cube it out, and that's how much you pay. So there's so many different ways to get scammed, but the point is you have no recourse. Here's, I think, the problem that people have, and this will be my final point. I'll stop my diatribe here. But the problem is people assume that Google is right, is smart, okay, is credible. They assume Google is credible, and 2, they assume that if they get screwed, they have recourse. Okay, and both of these are there's fallacies in both of these premises. Okay, you have no recourse. Once your stuff is on that truck and you sign the paperwork, a police officer will come to your home and they will tell you there is nothing that can be done because this is the contract you've entered into. Okay. And then these people will say, well, you know what, then I'm going to leave a bad review online. I'll show you. Okay. Leave a bad review for Acme Moving Company, because tomorrow it's going to be ABC Moving Company. And the next day it's going to be DEF Moving Company, and so on and so forth. Okay. So there's no way to catch these scammers. It's like whack-a-mole because they keep popping up. These people operate 20, 50 different entities, and they just burn them and turn them. There's no way. So it's so important to have a relationship with your moving company and to do what you said initially, which is not trust Google, but use a recommendation.
Yeah. And if you're on a lump sum policy, and this I suppose is for the RMCs, is for the corporates out there, is in that case, give them a list of moving companies that they can use with the lump sum. If you have to go lump sum, don't just let them go, because you said it will come back and bite companies at the end. If they do a deal and they've got a move for say $2,000, and then it turns up being $6,000 or $10,000, they're going to be coming back to you in mobility, you in the HR function, to say, hey, that wasn't fair, and they're going to try and get a reclaim from you.
Yeah, and in that way, if you at least provide a list of vetted carriers where there's a relationship and there's some proven track record, there's also accountability, so that they know that they're being referred by the company, and at least there's a bit of a relationship. It's still, there's no teeth there, there's no contract, the weight of the company is not behind it, but at least there's might be a little bit of a, hey, I've used them before, try it out. It's it's okay. But I would submit to our viewers out there, and I would love to hear the opinion on this, but I would submit to them that the duty of care, which we pride ourselves on as a mobility industry, we pride ourselves on being, of having a duty of care, right? And making sure that people are taken care of when they go forth in the world on behalf of the corporation. We have a duty of care to protect people even on domestic assignments, and to protect people even in household goods moves. It's not just about health and safety on foreign assignments, and I think that this is often missed. And actually, if I may plug really quick, we actually have Worldwide ERC's Vice President of Government Affairs on Love+Relo on Friday, Rebecca Peters, and she's going to talk about this duty of care issue. But I think it's very important. I think we always think, hey, if I send somebody to China, I have a duty of care to make sure they're healthy and safe. But you also have a duty of care to make sure people aren't getting scammed, ripped off, and their stuff stolen or injured while doing a self move as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And I mean, the comments thing is just lighting up. We're getting so many comments. There's so much strong feeling about this. And people are saying, can we talk about lump sum again? We will. I promise you, we will do another show specifically on lump sum. We've touched a nerve here. There's no doubt this is a big issue, even bigger than the stuff on the pricing itself. But I mean, there is one question. I'll just go back to you very, very quickly, if I may, Michelle. And I know you've done a little bit of research on how actually can we better control or monitor vendor pricing.
Yes.
And if you can just talk about that. I think we'll run on a little bit because there's so much going on here, but we've got a few minutes. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. So talking about how vendor pricing can be better controlled and monitored. And again, I'm sure Ben will share their professional insights. But the options we gave in our polling were to A, abolish commissions / kickbacks, B, limit the out of scopes and add-ons, C, audit household goods / moving costs, or D, always work on fixed fees only. So those were the options in the poll questions. Ben Heller, do you want to chime in first?
Yeah, they're all wrong.
And Marcel has said, just use PricePoint.
There you go.
There you go.
I don't know. It's obviously your pal.
I appreciate it. No, but they're like every single those like options create this falsity of control. So the first one, abolish commissions and kickbacks. Well, I can understand in a theoretical world how that would work, but I have not seen any RMC that actually believes they can do that, because no one wants to pay $3,000 to manage a transferee through a mobility process. So the way that procurement has worked it is I want my transferee managed for nothing. and the corporation or that department has to pay nothing for that. Well, how are they supposed to make money? It's like they push down over here. It's got to come up over here. So I don't see that happening, because I don't see corporate mobility suddenly rushing to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per transferee in fees to the RMC or mobility company or whatever. So that is not happening and not going to control costs. Number two, limit out of scopes and add-ons. Also a bad idea. If you limit adding on supplementals, what you're essentially doing is, like, now if that transferee needs a supplemental, are they not going to get it? If they have a TV that needs to be created, are they going to get it? Or is that TV going to get cracked? Or what is more likely to happen is now that mover is like, well, I'm going to have to do some of these supplementals. And now that mover has to be a risk manager. They have to evaluate how much is the average supplemental. And let me teach you something here. Movers are not risk managers. That is not what they're great at. So they're going to pad their pricing to the point where they will be making more money on that. And so you're paying more on that. It's not a good idea in general. You should pay for what you need for the move. Number three, audit household goods or moving costs. So I could rant for 45 minutes on why auditing is bad and how it externalizes things. When I was at Accenture and running these RFPs, and I got burned the first time. I did a bid where I got 35% savings, and I was a so-called expert. And of course, that savings never materialized. And I went and met with all the auditors, and the first thing that I remember them saying is like, Ben, all the movers and the mobility companies, all the RMCs, they're all crooks, and here's why. And so the auditor mentality is, we're going to control everything. But they have to justify value. They have to prove that the mover is a crook. He's trying to screw you. They have to do that, or else their value is diminished. And so what it creates is this adversarial relationship between corporate mobility and their mover, where now the mover is a crook, and mover, you have to submit an original invoice, or I'm not paying for it. Oh, that weight density was too high. I'm not paying for that. Now the mover has to basically set up a department that negotiates with household good auditors. That isn't cheap. These people are 60, 80 grand a year. So now you have additional costs and overhead to deal with it. And ultimately, movers get their pricing beat down so much, they have additional operating costs. They have to work with the lowest quality origin and destination agents just to eke out a profit. And meanwhile, that lowers the quality, which is the exact opposite of what corporate mobility wants. They don't want problems in this case. They want a noise-free, smooth-moving experience, so their C-level executives don't come back to them and yell at them. They're all risk-averse. They don't want this. So auditing, it's not a good decision. And then fixed fee only, I'd say that aligns with the limited, like out of scope. You don't want to control the cost. If you have to do fixed fees for 3 years, movers have variable pricing. Ben talked about how cardboard pricing has spiked. Freight rates have gone through the roof as a result of COVID. Are you going to hold your mover to that pricing? You can't. It's not a good decision. The mover is just going to say, oh, I can't do it. Or they're going to have to go and cut corners to eke out a tiny little profit at the expense of your transferee experience. So every single one of these methodologies has unintended consequences, which are bad for corporate mobility. They're bad for the transferee. And we can use data. We can use transparency to ensure that the corporation and the transferee are confident that they're receiving a quality move at a fair price. And this draconian 1980s style control needs to die in the moving industry. I'm done.
Okay, so let's just get Michelle. Let's get the results in first.
Sure. And then the results are sort of all over the place, where 29% of respondents thought, oh, I'm sorry, hold on, 25%.
On screen, 25%.
25% abolish commissions and kickbacks, 33% limiting out of scopes, 24% auditing the household goods, and 18% working on fixed fees only.
Okay, but let's move it forward, because what you were saying, Ben H, is that you don't like any of them, okay? No. And I'm conscious of the fact we're moving towards the closing session here. So what were your practical suggestions? What should we do?
I think that we need, the system is broken. the reason I joined PricePoint was because I saw from running these RFPs that they had unintended consequences. The process is broken, and movers aren't wrong for bidding low and then marking up supplementals, marking up moves out of scope, and manipulating weight and volume, because that's the system that they've been put into, and they've had to do that to succeed, and they are not wrong for doing that. What's wrong is the system. So I say we need to change the system, and that's what PricePoint does. We drive a level of transparency into all of these components. Movers are allowed to do what movers do, charge what is appropriate, and they get measured, and they get compared against the rest of the market. And by having 250,000 live tariffs, another 1.5 million tariffs that have been archived, you can see the performance on a move-by-move basis. You know when a price is in line with the market average, and that enables a level of partnership with movers so that they can prevent all the challenges that we've talked about today.
Okay, I want to go on to one last subject. I know it's a subject BC and Cross that you're passionate about, and we'll just end up with that. And that's this question of satisfaction surveys. And I know you've got views on it. Do you want to sort of time for a rant?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So we decide, okay, we're not going to do lump sum, so let's go contract with our movers, right? And let's beat them up over price. And I think Ben handled that. And how do we evaluate them? How do we evaluate them qualitatively, right? And the first thing that we go to is customer satisfaction scores, right? So when I go in and I see a client, I'm like, oh, we got 94% customer satisfaction. You know, we send them this, you know, survey at the end, and they fill it out and they send it back, and everybody's got all this satisfaction. I was, you know, a major RMC, you know, says, you know, we're not going to settle for 10, we're going for 11. Well, it's a 10-point scale. And then the next year they show up and say, you know what, last year we said we're going for 11, this year we're going for 12. Okay, it's still a 10-point scale. So it gets out of control, okay? So it's an asymptotic relationship here where you can only get so close to 100, okay? And then you start to level off, and then people just get silly, right? How do you get from 94 to 98? You show me somebody that has a 98% customer satisfaction score, and I'll show you a damn liar, okay? So what happens is people are going out there, these companies out here, right? In the quest to chase for the gold cup, you know, at some RMC, they're going out here and they're gaming these satisfaction surveys. So they're bribing these transferees to fill out or not fill out satisfaction surveys.
That's a strong word.
What's that?
That's a strong word.
No, it's bribe. It's
bribery.
Flat out a bribe.
When I pay you for something, you know, to do something that you're not supposed to do. Yeah, it's happening all the time. And here's the thing is RMCs are complicit in this because they're taking those same customer satisfaction scores and they're going to their client and they're saying, hey, enormous company, look how good we're doing for you. The last guy had a 98%, the last RMC had a 98%, but in our first year with you, we've gotten up to a 99.6% customer satisfaction rate, right? How great are we? Oh, and guess what? We hit our covenants also, and we got eligible for a bonus that you said you'd give us in the RFP process after you beat us up and raked us over the coals over pricing. You know, you threw in that little kicker, so we get our extra $25K because we hit 95.5% or over satisfaction. So it's one big ridiculous game that's being played, right? And at some point we have to stop and be honest.
I don't know how many people actually know about this. This is, I'll be honest, I didn't know this was going on. I don't know how many corporates know that this is going on. This is extraordinary stuff. It's extraordinary to me.
I mean, it's
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Listen,
yeah, I mean,
to me, you know, as a former in-house corporate person who would have the quarterly reviews and showed, like you said, 99.6%, and you run through your mind, you know, sort of the comments heard from transferees, you're kind of like, how does this add up?
Yeah, you're like, I could think of 4 people that had a bad move, and out of 100, and yet you say you're exactly. You do the math in your head. You're like, well, Rita had a bad move and Steve had a bad move and Bob had a bad, you're like, well, that doesn't seem right. How come I hear so much noise and yet your numbers are so good? Right. And this is when it goes back to, you got to get out of the numbers. Okay. I had a boss back in the day that said, Ben, I need you to be more of a numbers guy. I need you to be more numbers driven. You be in the data, right? And then I worked for a boss just recently who told me, Ben, I need you to be less of a numbers guy. Okay. When you run this business, you should know in your gut if you're doing a good job, right? The numbers don't have to tell you. Okay. If you're looking at the numbers, you don't know what you're doing. And I think when you run a mobility program and you have your finger on the pulse, you know every day if you're being successful or not being successful. Okay. And you shouldn't have to look at your RMC or some quarterly report to tell you if you're being successful or not. Are you creating amazing employee experiences or not? That is a very easy question to answer.
I agree with you.
Okay. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, I tell you, when I put this show together, we were talking about it. One of my colleagues said to me, how are you going to make vendor pricing an interesting subject for an hour? Okay, we've made this, I think this has been one of the most interesting, fascinating conversations, and we've run over by 10 minutes. And it just shows so much here. And I promise, I've had so many comments, I promise that we will go back on this subject. I've had people volunteering to be on the program. I've had Jack Jampel, I've had Rob Lesser, I've had others promise. We will get you on the show. We will reach out to you. Other people who want to be on the show, let us know. We'll try our best to get out to you. This has been awesome, Mike. I'm really grateful. Let's just bring Julia back. Julia, really grateful to you for all the immigration updates you've given us this week and all the week. I appreciate you're actually on vacation at the moment, and we've ruined your vacation by getting you to use your ropey Wi-Fi and coming and joining us. But you've been a real support, and we love your updates. Michelle, it's been, as ever, fascinating getting your insight as a former Global Mobility Director and also the research that you do. And I really appreciate all the help that you give on this show. And then lastly, to the two Bens, I mean, you've been real sports. It's been just so much fun. And I know we'll stay in touch. And Ben H, I know we're trying to do stuff with you guys between Beneva and PricePoint, and I'm sure we'll sort something out. BC, your show is amazing, and I wish you all the best with your show.
Thank you.
And the audience, I just want to say thank you for all the audience. It's been great. You make this show, all the comments you give us every week. We will be back. I said there is the demo going live now in a few minutes' time on Benevo. We're live next week with the view of the expat CEO. So we're going to get, the poor guy who's at the end of the whole chain. We should actually be at the front of the whole chain, the ultimate client that we will serve. We're going to get his perspective, and then also we've got a session on Thursday week to talk about how fintech is going to impact mobility. And I think that's a whole new area. I think that's going to be fascinating. So all that really remains is for me to say goodbye to all our panelists and goodbye to the audience. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
It's been really fun.
Thank you.